The Dojo Challenge. The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of the Junfan Gung Fu Institute in Los Angeles, casting beams of golden light onto the mat where Bruce Lee trained. His movements were precise, almost hypnotic, a blur of speed and control as he executed a series of side kicks, his feet cutting through the air with a crunching sound. Sweat dripped down his naked torso, but his breathing remained calm, as if each stroke was a natural extension of his mind. It was then that the dojo door opened with a creak. A tall man, with broad shoulders and a calm expression, entered. Chuck Norris, a black belt in several martial arts, known for his relentless strength and impeccable technique, watched Bruce for a few seconds before crossing his arms. "I heard you're fast," said Norris, his voice deep but without arrogance. "But speed without strength is like an arrow without a tip." Bruce stopped mid-motion, his muscles still tense, and slowly turned around. His dark eyes sparkled with an almost feline curiosity. "And strength without speed," he replied, his voice soft but firm, "is like a hammer without a target." Norris smiled, a flash of defiance on his lips. "Let's see." The dojo was silent. The few students training there moved away, forming a circle around the two men. Bruce didn't move, but his body seemed to vibrate with contained energy. Norris, in turn, assumed a classic karate stance, fists closed, feet firmly on the ground. The first attack came without warning. Norris rushed forward with a direct punch, quick but calculated. Bruce dodged with minimal movement, as if his body were made of water, and counterattacked with a roundhouse kick that passed inches from Norris' face. The impact of the air made the black belt's hair sway. Norris did not back down. He turned his body and launched a low kick, aiming for Bruce's ribs. But before his foot touched the target, Bruce was already in the air, executing a spinning jump that took him backwards, out of reach. When he landed, his hands moved in a blur, a double strike, palm to palm, that Norris blocked at the last instant. The sound of the impacts echoed through the dojo, dry and rhythmic. The two men moved like dancers in a shadow duel, each testing the other's limits. Norris was pure force, each blow packed with power. Bruce, in turn, was fluid, as if he anticipated each movement before Norris even executed it. Then, in a moment of distraction, Norris attempted a roundhouse kick, a spinning kick that could knock down a bull. Bruce, however, didn't shy away. Instead, he advanced, fitting under the kick and applying an armbar that knocked Norris off balance. The black belt fell backwards onto the mat, but immediately rolled over, getting up in one agile movement. "You're good," Norris admitted, panting but smiling. Bruce reached out his hand, helping him up. "You too," he said, sincerely. "But true strength is not in beating others. It's about overcoming yourself." Norris nodded, understanding the lesson. There was no longer any challenge in the air, just mutual respect. The two men exchanged a firm handshake, and the dojo filled again with the sound of training. That night, as Bruce closed the institute, he stopped for a moment and looked up at the sky. "I knew that this meeting wasn't just about who was faster or stronger. It was about something bigger, about the path each person chose to follow." And, for Bruce Lee, the path never ended. The weight of the journey. The following days at the institute were marked by a subtle but profound change. Norris did not challenge Bruce again, but his presence at the dojo became more constant. He observed, absorbed, trained with a discipline he hadn't shown before. Bruce, in turn, did not treat him as a defeated rival, but as a potential student, someone who still had a lot to learn, just like himself. One afternoon, as the last students left the place, Norris approached Bruce, who was arranging the punching bags. "I didn't come here just to fight," he said, hesitantly. "I came because I heard about a different way of training. A way that is not just about technique, but about what you call the path." Bruce stopped what he was doing and looked at him. "And what did you find?" Norris took a deep breath. Confusion. Anger. He flexed his fingers, as if he still felt the impact of the exchanged blows. "I thought I knew who I was. Now I'm not sure anymore." Bruce nodded, as if he had been waiting for those words. Doubt is the first step. He pointed to the center of the mat. Do you really want to train? Norris did not respond. He just took off his shoes and entered the empty space. They didn't fight. Not that day. Bruce made him repeat basic movements, kicks, punches, shifts, with almost obsessive precision. There was no rush. There was no competition. Just the sound of breathing, the creaking of the mat underfoot, and the weight of each gesture. Why is that? Norris asked, after an hour of exhausting repetitions. Because perfection doesn't exist, Bruce replied. But the search for her does. And that's where you get lost or find yourself. Norris didn't say anything else. But in the days that followed, he returned. And he came back. And he came back. The Royal Challenge. A month later, the institute received an unexpected visitor. Two men entered the dojo without warning, dressed in impeccable kimonos, postures rigid. One of them, older, with scars on his knuckles, looked around with disdain. Is this the place? He asked, in Cantonese. Bruce, who was adjusting a student's headband, slowly turned around. Depends on what you're looking for. The older man smiled, but there was no humor in his eyes. I'm Master Lao. This is my disciple, Wei. He pointed to the young man beside him, who was staring straight ahead. I heard you teach a different style. That mixes what should not be mixed. Bruce crossed his arms. And what does this have to do with me? I want to see if this philosophy of yours can stand a real test. Lao clapped his hands, and Wei advanced in a fluid movement, throwing a roundhouse kick that Bruce easily dodged. The students retreated, forming a circle. Norris, who was in the corner, felt the air change. It wasn't training. It was a demonstration of power. Bruce didn't fight back. He just moved, avoiding each attack with an economy of gesture that made it clear he could counterattack at any moment. Wei, frustrated, increased his speed, but the more he attacked, the more Bruce seemed to dance around him, as if time was stretching out. Then, in an instant, Bruce stopped. Wei, mid-strike, froze. Enough, said Bruce, quietly. Wei backed away, panting, eyes burning with humiliation. Lao didn't move. His face was a mask of stone. You dodge. I choose, Bruce corrected. There is no honor in beating a man who is not ready. What if I say he's ready? Lao took a step forward. What if I say you're scared? The dojo was silent. Even the youngest students felt the tension. Bruce looked at Norris, who was tense, ready to intervene. Then to Lao. Fear is an illusion. He took off his shirt, revealing the old scars on his torso. But respect is not. Lao nodded, as if he had been waiting for that. Then let's see if your words are as strong as your blows. The proof. They fought in the center of the mat, under the yellow light of the lamps. Lao was fast, but his technique was rigid, based on predictable patterns. Bruce, on the other hand, moved like water, adapting, flowing, finding gaps where none seemed to exist. With each deflected blow, each restrained counterattack, Lao's frustration grew. You don't fight. He growled, after a kick that Bruce blocked with a simple movement of his hips. I fight, Bruce replied, while dodging a direct punch. But not as you expect. Lao attacked again, this time with a series of low blows, trying to take him down. Bruce jumped, spun in the air and came down with a side kick that hit Lao's shoulder, making him stagger. The older master backed away, breathing heavily. His eyes glowed with something that went beyond anger, it was recognition. You're different, he finally admitted. Bruce dropped his hands. We all are. Lao looked at Wei, who was watching the scene with an unreadable expression. Then to Norris, who was watching everything silently. Finally, he turned to Bruce. Maybe I came for the wrong reason. Or at least, Bruce replied. Depends on what you take from here. Lau hesitated. Then he made a short, formal bow. I'll think about it. And with that, he and Wei left the dojo. The legacy. The days returned to normal. But something had changed. Norris, who previously viewed training as a means to prove a point, now viewed it as an end in itself. He began training with an intensity that surprised even Bruce. Not out of ambition, but out of a silent need to understand yourself. Bruce, in turn, continued teaching. But sometimes, when the dojo was empty, he would stop in the center of the mat and close his eyes, as if listening to something beyond the silence. One night, as he was closing the institute's doors, Norris found him standing on the sidewalk, looking at the stars. "Do you think they'll come back?" asked Norris. Bruce didn't need to ask who he was talking about. "Perhaps." He smiled. "But it doesn't matter. What matters is what we do while we wait." Norris nodded. Then, without saying anything else, he turned and walked away. Bruce stayed there for a while longer, feeling the cold night wind. I knew that, regardless of what came, the path would continue. Always. And that, after all, was all that mattered. The last lesson. Months passed, and Bruce's dojo became a refuge not only for students seeking discipline, but for those who carried wounds deeper than skin tags. Among them was a woman named Lena, whose blank stare hid a loss she refused to name. She always arrived before dawn, moving with mechanical precision, as if each blow on the punching bag was an attempt to exorcise something that had no name. Bruce watched her in silence, recognizing in her movements the same restlessness that had once consumed him. One afternoon, after everyone had left, he approached her while she was wrapping her hand wraps. "You're not fighting the bag," he said bluntly. "You're fighting something that isn't there." Lena stopped, her fingers still stuck in the fabric. For a moment, Bruce thought she was going to leave. But then, in a voice that sounded like she had been dragged from the bottom of a well, she replied, "I don't know how to stop anymore." Bruce offered no words of comfort. Instead, he grabbed a pair of gloves and handed them to her. "Then fight me." She hesitated, but accepted. The first blow was clumsy, filled with misdirected anger. Bruce dodged it easily, but didn't counterattack. Instead, he let her push him, try to hit him, waste all the strength he carried inside him. When Lena finally stopped, panting, her arms shaking, Bruce said, "Anger is like a knife. If you don't know how to hold it, it will cut you first." Lena fell to her knees, tears finally breaking through the barrier she had built. Bruce didn't touch her. He just stayed there, waiting, until she could breathe again. "What do I do now?" she asked, her voice broken. "You get up," he said. "And decide whether you're going to let the weight crush you or whether you're going to use it to get stronger." Meanwhile, Norris had disappeared. Bruce didn't ask for him. I knew that some paths needed to be traveled alone. But one night, when winter was beginning to give way to spring, Norris returned. He was thinner, with deep dark circles under his eyes and a recent scar at the corner of his mouth. He didn't say where he had been, and Bruce didn't ask. "I need a place to stay," was all he said. Bruce nodded and handed him the keys to the room above the dojo. "You know where to find me." Norris walked up the stairs without looking back. Bruce heard the door close and, for a moment, he felt the weight of all the absences that had ever passed through that place. But there was no time for nostalgia. The dojo had never been a place for easy answers, but rather for questions that could only be answered with action. The real test came the following fall. A group of men broke into the institute one night when only Bruce and Lena were there. There were 3 of them, armed with knives and chains, and their eyes glowed with the same violence that Bruce had seen in so many others before. But there was something different about them. They were no ordinary bandits. They were former students, men who had once trained there and who now returned to destroy what he had built. "You taught us how to fight," said the leader, a man named Rourke, spitting on the mat. "But he never taught us what to do next." Bruce didn't move. You chose what to do next. Rourke laughed, a harsh, joyless sound. Do we choose? You gave us strength, but you gave us nothing to do with it. Now, we only know how to break things. Lena positioned herself next to Bruce, her fists clenched. He stopped her with a look. Then break it, he said, calmly. But know that every piece you destroy will be rebuilt. And every time they return, they will find someone waiting. Rourke hesitated. For a moment, Bruce saw doubt cross his face. But then he raised the knife and advanced. The fight was quick and brutal. Bruce didn't use refined techniques, just what was necessary to disarm and immobilize. When it was over, the three were on the floor, panting, with expressions that wavered between anger and shame. You can go, said Bruce. But if they come back, it won't be to fight me. It will be to fight against themselves. They walked away, limping, without looking back. Lena took a deep breath. You knew they would come back. No, Bruce admitted. But I knew someone would come back. Over time, the dojo filled up again. Some old students returned, embarrassed, looking for something they couldn't name. Others arrived for the first time, drawn by stories of a place where people learned to get up no matter how many times they fell. Bruce continued teaching. But now, when he closed his eyes in the center of the mat, it wasn't silence he heard. It was the sound of footsteps, of people learning to walk again. One night, while sweeping the floor after class, Norris came downstairs. It was different. He still carried the marks of what he had experienced, but there was something lighter on his shoulders. I'm leaving tomorrow, he said. Bruce didn't stop sweeping. Where to? I don't know. But I need to go. Bruce nodded. If you need to come back, you know where to find me. Norris smiled, a tired but genuine smile. I know. And then, as he had done so many times before, he turned and walked away. Bruce stood there, listening to the sound of Norris' footsteps moving away. There was no sadness. Just the certainty that, for some, the path never ends. And that, after all, was all that mattered.